thought you might like to see, or some of you at least, the Sawbench modifications that I've made recently. We're in lockdown at the moment. It's the 6th of May 2020 and we do have time on our hands to do things. Right now we're a little bit short on the small logs. As I've mentioned I think before, I tend to cut my logs about 12 to 16, 18 inches long, longer the better really, because the outside wood burner can take 18-inch logs. We also burn the Rayburn, which is only needs 6 to 8-inch logs. So this is the Sawbench. I made this about 3 or 4 years ago I think, and I do have an early video of when I first made it. Originally I fitted a 2-cylinder diesel engine, Ruggerini engine, and recently I wanted to use that elsewhere, so I've put on this single cylinder diesel, and I'll show you some of the other mods that I've done as well. I made these belt and pulley guards a while ago from some bit of scrap steel that I had from old night storage heaters, and that works out pretty well. And it is reassuring when you're using it to know that there's less spinning bits to get your parts and bits tangled up in, and that's kind of nice. It just gives you a little bit peace of mind. The saw blade, I think I mentioned it before, is about 24 inches in diameter, so that does more than everything I need it to do. A small addition was this little toolbox that I got from my mate Billy. It's off a little Ransom's machine, a rotavator, but that's just a tiny little box, and it's really handy to have your spanners and a bit of silicone oil, which I use on the table here. It just makes the logs slip nicely across there. Just makes a little bit of difference actually, or quite a bit of difference, and it's worth doing, just a small thing. And when I changed the engine I needed to change some of the electrical. This is the switch that came with the engine. I needed to also put in a pull stop. There's the throttle control. It's upside down. Up is low speed, down is high speed. Also on the front here I wanted to be able to vary the throttle speed while I was using the saw. I just thought it would make it easier when I'm cutting some heavy logs sometimes where you just want more power. It allows the engine also just to drop back to idle when you're not using it. Just found it just a helpful addition really. So it folds away when you're not using it, and then you open it up when you're using it. So as you stand here you can put your knee against it and you increase the engine RPM by moving it this way. The way I accomplished that was to make this bracket here with this arm, and it pulls on a lever here, which in turn, if I can show you, pulls on a throttle cable here. Throttle cable here, which goes back obviously to the engine. It also has a micro switch here. This is a rear brake light switch off a motorcycle. So what that also does is when it reaches a certain point, so when you increase the RPM, it switches the electric clutch on and engages the blade, and that's an option that I have to engage the blade when the engine revs increase, or you can override the blade engage and have it engaged manually with a switch. This is the new engine. It's a single cylinder Acme. I think it's Italian. I think it's about 350cc, and couldn't find any specs about the horsepower, but I reckon it's around about the 10 to 12 horsepower range. It seems to have plenty of grunt for what I need here on this application. I needed to make up an exhaust system for it, so this is an exhaust silencer off a Nissan Micra, I think. I just went to the local auto spares place, and went through their racks and just purchased an exhaust that I thought would fit. So that was fairly straightforward. and needed to put some bracing in. I did have a crack up here across here, and that extra bracing was put in after that happened. It's got a built-in diesel tank, and you've probably seen this on the last video, but I put in a, actually I didn't, it wasn't on the last video, but this is a larger drive now. It's the other one, the rubber inside used to degrade quite quickly. It was sort of too much for it really, and this is a much bigger one that I managed to find on the internet, and it's basically a toothed drive with a rubber spider in between. And then this is the electric clutch that's from, I think it's from an old digger or something. But so the drive goes through here, and then when you energize this with 12 volts, then the pulley spins, and then it goes up to a little lay shaft there, which reduces the speed of that pulley, which then goes on to drive the blade itself. So here's the two throttle cables. One is the manual throttle on the lever, and the other one is the knee operated throttle. And when either one of them, it's quite a simple arrangement, when either one of them pulls, it pulls this lever down, which increases the RPM. I needed to add an additional spring here because this engine didn't have a very good return spring on it. Lights and a number plate bar has been added. Fairly straightforward steel boxing around these lights just to give some form of protection, and then these simple little lugs enable you to slide a standard size number plate in there. I've started putting all these on my bits of equipment. This is a little 12 volt accessory power box. So I have here USB charging ports there, 2 of them, and then underneath a standard cigarette lighter 12 volt socket. So this is really handy for obviously charging my phone if I'm out somewhere. It's also really handy for keeping the battery here charged up. I plug a cigarette plug in here that's connected to a solar panel, and then that just keeps this battery charged. So this socket here is permanently connected to the battery, and this USB charging port only becomes live when the ignition is on. Yeah, so that's about it with the mods. I'll show you me using it because it makes the video a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to cut some of these logs down here now and then chuck them in the trailer. I'm folding the knee throttle away here and then setting the engine RPM using the hand throttle. This just keeps the engine going at the same speed. I always used to use it like this, but I tend to use the foot throttle much more now. It's just easier, and it's nice that the engine drops back down to idle when you step away from the machine. I do sometimes cut really big pieces of gnarly wood that I can't split very well on the log splitter, and that knee operated throttle, that's when it really comes into its own, because when you're cutting almost the full height of the blade, you really do need, you know, that extra power, and you can just do that with your knee. So that's really handy. That's probably the best mod I think I've done on this machine. One of my mates came past when I was using this, and he said that thing's got death written all over it, which I found was mildly amusing but also slightly concerning. It does look pretty mean, and you know, that would do some serious damage if you were to put your fingers in there. I think you might as well say goodbye to them. Either that or be quick to pick them up off the floor. Yeah, so I do treat it with a lot of respect. I always wear ear protection and some sort of face screen. If you're interested, when we burn our Rayburn, which is Rayburn sort of Arga cooker, we burn it 24/7 when it's actually going. And this little trolley, which is 24 inches deep, 24 inches across and 42 inches long, when that's full, that would last us about a week. And you can see I'm about halfway now, so I can normally fill this in about, oh, not even 20 minutes, probably 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes. It's handy to go from 16 to 8 inch logs down to 6 to 8 inch logs, and the Sawbench makes that happen. So thanks for watching that vid. I will, I think, try and do an update on the log splitter at some point. A couple of people have asked me about that, and I'll do that. That's not at home at the moment. I took it back up to the workshop. And also I could, if you like, do a little bit of an update on the Cub Cadet. That's my kind of, here you can see it, that's my sort of garden tractor. I've recently put in the twin cylinder diesel engine in there, and I've also added electrics, put headlights in, indicators, a horn, and you may have seen the video of the fuel gauge as well. So that's all running well. I've done a few other mods, put some different front tyres on it. But yes, that is a lovely little tractor. Anywho, thanks for watching. It's nice and sunny here in sunny Andover. We'll speak to you soon. Cheers. Oh, here's my mate Billy. Billy, you should be at home.
Shut up.
You're not allowed out. You're old and you might die if you get the virus. That's my mate Billy. Cheers everyone, see ya.